For a long time, the galaxy lived in harmony of sounds. Across the stars, thousands of civilizations spoke through gentle voices, soft songs, and calm broadcasts. The endless void between worlds was never truly empty. It carried greetings, teachings, and stories. Every race sent messages into the dark. Some shared tales of their ancestors, others sent music made from crystal strings, and a few shared peaceful lessons for young minds. The galaxy was full of voices, yet every voice had something in common. They were calm, measured, and safe. No one had ever dared to send raw cries of the heart. Then one day, something changed. From a small blue planet, resting quietly on the edge of a spiral arm, came a new signal. It began as static, weak, and broken, as if the world itself was struggling to be heard. At first, the listeners thought it was an error. Machines could fail. Static often came from dying suns or storms that tore through the void. Yet this sound was not like that. It grew clearer, sharper, until it cut through the calm airwaves like a blade. What followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. It was not music, not words, not even ordered sound. It was a scream. A human scream, filled with pain and fear. More followed. Dozens, then hundreds, mixed together, rising and falling like a storm of grief. The sound of pure anguish rushed into the listening stations scattered across many worlds. The keepers of sound, trained for centuries to study and interpret signals, froze in silence. They could not move. Their hearts trembled. On the water planet of Ilur, a scholar named Thuan dropped his glass device when the scream reached him. His species had long lived without sorrow. Their history books spoke of struggles, but always in calm tones. Hearing the cry of humans shook him deeply. It was not just noise. It was something alive. On the crystal towers of Val, a counselor listened with both hands pressed against her chest. The scream echoed through her inner chambers. She whispered to her aides that this was not natural sound. It was a weapon, designed to break the mind. Her people had faced many foes, but never a sound like this. On the iron cities of Rol, a group of warriors sat in their training hall. They were strong and proud, their voices loud in their daily drills. Yet when the scream arrived, they fell silent. The leader raised his hand, yet even he trembled. "This sound carries wounds deeper than any blade," he said softly. The signal did not stop quickly. It played for several minutes, changing tones as different voices of pain rose and fell. Then came silence again. The stars returned to their usual whispers, but the galaxy was no longer the same. Every race, every leader, every listener carried the echo of that cry in their hearts. The question spread quickly. What kind of world would send such a sound? Was it a mistake, a recording that slipped into space without care? Or was it a message, a warning of something hidden within that small blue planet? For the first time in many centuries, fear spread across the galactic councils. The scream had touched something inside them that no logic could calm. On the council world, a great meeting was called. Leaders and scholars from across the galaxy gathered inside a hall of white stone and glowing light. They sat in silence until the great chamber filled. The sound was played once more, and the walls of the hall shook with the cries of humankind. The leaders looked at each other. Some turned their eyes away. Others clenched their hands. The high speaker finally rose. His voice was steady, but his eyes carried unease. "We have heard many things in our time," he said, "but never this. This is not a sound of triumph, nor peace, nor wisdom. This is the sound of pain. We must learn what it means. We must learn who these humans are." Across the chamber, murmurs began. Some feared humans were a violent race, trapped in endless suffering. Others believed the sound was a weapon, a test to see if the galaxy could endure. A few wondered if it was something more, something deeper, a truth about existence that other races had long forgotten. Far away, on Earth, no one knew what had been unleashed. To humans, it was only an old recording from their history, sent into the stars long ago by curious hands. They did not know that the galaxy had heard their screams. They did not know that the universe itself had fallen silent, waiting, watching, trembling. And so the day was remembered as the Day of Screams. It was the first moment when humankind's voice reached beyond its home. Not with gentle music, not with calm greetings, but with the raw cry of its heart. The galaxy would never be the same. The Day of Screams spread across the galaxy faster than any ordinary message. From the smallest moons to the greatest empires, every world that heard it passed it to another. The sound of humankind's pain became the most discussed subject in the stars. Leaders called urgent meetings, scholars filled their halls with endless arguments, and common people whispered about the strange blue world that had cried into the void. The council world was the place where great matters of the galaxy were always decided. It was a vast planet of white stone, green fields, and tall towers of crystal. It was neutral ground, belonging to no empire, where every race could gather without fear. When the sound of humans reached the council, the high speaker sent a message to every empire: all leaders must gather to discuss the meaning of the scream. Soon, ships from across the stars filled the skies of the council world. They came in every shape and size. Some glowed like fireflies, others looked like vast floating fortresses, and a few moved with the grace of giant birds. From each ship stepped delegates chosen to represent their people. In the grand hall of voices, the gathering began. The chamber was larger than any palace on earth. Its roof rose so high that clouds sometimes drifted inside. Seats formed circles around a central platform, where the high speaker stood. Every race had its own place, marked by signs of their culture. Some seats were shaped like flowing water for the aquatic races. Some were made of stone for the heavy-bodied people of the mountains. Others glowed with soft lights for beings of energy. When all were present, the high speaker raised his staff, and silence filled the hall. His voice rang clear, though his face showed the same unease felt by all. We are gathered because of a sound. A sound unlike any we have known. You have all heard it? You have all felt it? The question before us is simple: what is it, and what must we do? With that, the scream of humanity was played once more. The hall shook with the echoes. Some leaders covered their ears, others shut their eyes, but none could block the feeling that gripped their hearts. When the sound faded, murmurs rose like a tide. The first to speak was Counselor Valia of the Crystal Towers. Her voice was sharp, and her people valued logic above all. This sound is no accident, she declared. It is a weapon. It was made to break us from within. No blade, no beam, no storm has ever struck us like this scream. If these humans send more such sounds, our people will suffer. I say we must prepare to defend ourselves. Her words were met with nods from many, but not all. From the water pools at the edge of the hall rose Scholar Thuan of Ilir. His voice was soft, yet it carried across the chamber. I do not believe it is a weapon. I believe it is a memory. Listen carefully, and you will hear not hatred, but pain. These humans have suffered, and they preserved the sound of that suffering. They did not erase it. They sent it into the stars. The question is not how to fight them, but why they chose to share such a thing. The warriors of Rul stirred in their seats. Their leader, Joruk, stood tall, his metal armor gleaming under the hall lights. You speak of memory, but memory is shared with pride. No one shares weakness willingly. If they sent this scream, it is because they wish to show us their strength. They are telling us that they survive pain, that they endure what would break others. Perhaps this is their way of warning us: do not test them. The hall fell into heavy silence. The delegates looked at one another, each caught between fear, curiosity, and doubt. Some wanted to avoid the humans entirely. Others demanded that a fleet be sent to watch them. A few called for direct contact. Finally, the high speaker lifted his staff again. You each see different things in the same sound. Some hear a weapon. Some hear a memory. Some hear a warning. Perhaps all of you are right, or perhaps none of you are. But we cannot let fear rule us. We must know the truth. He paused, letting the words sink into every mind. Then he spoke again with greater strength. I call for an envoy. We will send a ship to this world of humans. We will not go with armies, but with voices. We will speak to them and learn the meaning of this scream. Only then can we decide our path. The chamber filled with murmurs once more. Some protested, saying it was dangerous. Others agreed, saying it was the only way. After long hours of debate, the decision was made. A single envoy ship would travel to the blue planet called Earth. It would carry a crew of many races, chosen for wisdom and calm spirit. They would meet the humans face to face and bring back answers. When the meeting ended, the delegates left the hall, each deep in thought. The scream of humans still echoed in their hearts. For the first time in many generations, the galaxy was uncertain of the future. On Earth, however, life continued as always. The people of the blue planet worked, dreamed, and lived without knowing that across the stars, countless eyes were turning toward them. They did not yet know that the day of screams had begun a chain of events that would carry them into the heart of the galaxy itself. The envoy ship was unlike any single craft built by one race. It was a joint vessel, shaped by the designs of many civilizations. Its frame was long and smooth, built from the crystal of Val. Its wings spread like the great birds of Roll, carrying engines that glowed with steady light. Inside, halls of flowing water allowed the scholars of Ilur to live in comfort, while chambers of stone gave space to the heavy-bodied races. Every corner of the ship was designed to remind the crew that they were not from one world, but from all. The crew was chosen with care. Scholar Thuan of Ilur came for his deep knowledge of voices. Counselor Valia sent her trusted aide, Sarin, who carried the sharp mind of the crystal towers. Jorik of Rol sent his student Care, a young warrior who had not yet learned pride but carried open eyes. Alongside them came healers, thinkers, and record keepers. They were not an army but a circle of listeners. As the envoy ship left the council world, silence filled the chamber once more. Every delegate, every leader, and every citizen waited with unease. Some hoped the humans would welcome the envoy. Others feared the screams were a sign of endless violence. None knew what truth the envoy would find. The journey to Earth was long, but the crew spent their time studying the recordings of human sound. They listened not only to the scream but also to the other signals Earth had sent. They found songs, laughter, voices of greetings, and strange patterns of music. The more they listened, the less certain they became. The humans were not only screams. They were also joy, sadness, and wonder. It was a puzzle that no one could solve from afar. When at last the blue planet came into view, the crew stood in quiet awe. Earth shone with oceans that covered most of its surface. Clouds moved gently above green lands. The crew had seen many worlds, but Earth felt alive in a way few planets did. Its seas glimmered like mirrors, and its lands seemed to breathe. Scholar Thuan whispered that perhaps the cries of such a world would always carry deeper weight. The envoy ship moved into orbit and sent a greeting message in calm tones. They expected to wait for many days, but to their surprise, the humans answered quickly. A small station circling Earth returned a signal in a language the envoy could not understand, but its tone was warm and curious. The humans were not afraid. They were eager. To prepare, the envoy used their learning machines to study human speech. Within hours, they could form simple words. The humans were patient, repeating phrases slowly, teaching them as if teaching children. This patience surprised the crew. Many races of the galaxy demanded respect at first contact. The humans, however, offered kindness before caution. Finally, The time came for face-to-face meeting. The envoy ship landed on a plain of green fields near a human city. The air was clear, the sky blue, and the sun bright. A small group of humans came forward. They did not carry weapons, only flags and open hands. They walked with steady steps, though their eyes carried both caution and wonder. Scholar Thuan stepped down first, moving through the air with his flowing body of water and light. The humans gasped but did not flee. Instead, one of them stepped closer. He was dressed in simple clothing, his face open and calm. "Welcome," he said, his voice carrying warmth even across the barrier of languages. The envoy replied with careful words, each syllable slow. "We come, to learn. We come, to listen." The humans smiled, and soon both groups sat together under the sun. The humans offered food and water, which the envoy politely declined, though they admired the gesture. They asked about the signal that had shaken the stars, the scream that had carried so far. The humans grew quiet at first. They looked at one another, unsure of how to explain. Finally, one of them spoke with honesty. "That sound is old. It comes from a time of war on our world. It was pain, yes. But we keep it because we must not forget. We remember what sorrow feels like, so that we may choose peace with greater care." The envoy listened with wide eyes. They had expected denial, perhaps even pride in power. Instead, the humans spoke with humility. They admitted their past pain but also explained why they carried it forward. To them, the scream was not a weapon but a reminder of what must never return. That night, as the sun set over the fields, the crew of the envoy ship recorded their thoughts. Care, the young warrior, wrote that the humans carried scars like armor, not to threaten but to protect. Sarin, the aide of Valya, admitted that logic alone could not explain such a choice. Scholar Thuan, for the first time in many cycles, felt hope rise in his heart. The first contact had not brought battle or fear. It had brought a lesson. Humanity was not only screams of anguish. Humanity was memory, and memory was strength. And yet, the envoy knew this was only the beginning. They had touched the surface of human spirit, but deeper truths still waited to be uncovered. The galaxy would soon learn that humans were far more than they appeared. The envoy remained on Earth for several days, and in that time they spoke often with the humans. Meetings were held in open fields, in quiet halls, and even beneath the stars at night. The humans asked many questions about the galaxy, but they also answered with patience when the envoy asked about the scream that had carried across the stars. One evening, the envoy gathered in a circle with a group of human leaders inside a simple building made of stone and wood. There were no golden thrones or shining crystals. The room was plain, yet warm, filled with the sound of crackling fire and the quiet presence of human voices. Counselor Valya's aide, Sarin, looked directly at the humans and asked a question that had weighed on him since the first day. His voice was steady but sharp. "Why do you preserve your pain? Why not erase it as other races do? Pain weakens. Pain darkens. Yet you keep it and send it into the stars." The humans did not answer at once. They looked at each other as if passing the question from one mind to another. Finally, an elder human spoke. His face was lined with age, and his voice was calm but strong. "We keep it because it is part of who we are. If we forget pain, we forget the cost of peace. If we forget loss, we forget the value of life. We remember not because we want to suffer again, but because remembering keeps us from falling into the same mistakes." The hall grew quiet. The envoy listened closely. Some of them struggled to understand. Their own civilizations had long erased grief from memory. They kept records of victories, of wisdom, of progress, but sorrow was buried deep. To them, memory was a weight that slowed the spirit. Yet the humans carried it openly. Scholar Thuan leaned forward, his flowing form shimmering in the firelight. "But does it not hurt you still? When you hear these cries, do they not wound your heart again? The elder nodded gently. Yes, it does hurt. But in that hurt we find strength. It teaches us that peace is not free. It must be guarded. It must be chosen again and again. Without the memory of pain, peace is only a dream. With the memory of pain, peace becomes a choice. The envoy fell silent again. Even Jorik's student Care, who believed pain was only a test of strength, felt his heart shift. He had been trained to see wounds as marks of honor, yet the humans spoke not of honor but of wisdom born from grief. Later that night, as the meeting ended, the envoy walked among the fields of earth. The sky above was filled with stars, and for the first time, the crew wondered if every star carried its own story of sorrow. Sauron, who had once dismissed humans as reckless, now carried questions he could not answer with logic alone. The next day, the envoy witnessed something new. A small child was playing near the field where the ships had landed. She stumbled, fell, and began to cry. Her tears ran down her face, her small body shaking with the sound. The envoy froze. To them, this was a strange sight. Among most races, young ones did not cry in such a way. Pain was either hidden or ignored. But the humans around the child did not scold her. They rushed to her side, lifted her gently, and spoke soft words of comfort. Within moments, the child's tears turned to laughter. She rose to her feet and began to play again, stronger than before. Scholar Thuin whispered, almost to himself, even their smallest ones carry storms and rise again. That evening, the envoy asked the humans about this strange act. Why do you weep? Why do you let your tears fall where all can see? A human woman smiled kindly at them. Because tears are not weakness. They are truth. They show when the heart is heavy. They show when the heart is light. We cry in sorrow, and we cry in joy. To hide tears is to hide our soul. We do not wish to hide. The envoy had no words to answer. For them, this was new. They had seen countless worlds, yet none where tears were worn so openly. In their records that night, Sauron wrote, "The humans do not fear the breaking of the heart. They embrace it. And in embracing it, they rise stronger." Perhaps that is why their scream reached us. It was not a signal of defeat. It was the sound of a people who refused to forget. As days passed, the envoy carried these lessons with growing wonder. They had come fearing humans would be violent or dangerous. Instead, they found a species unafraid of its own sorrow, unafraid to remember, unafraid to cry. And in that unshaken openness, the envoy began to feel something they had not expected. Respect. The galaxy had feared the day of screams. But on Earth, the envoy saw that behind those screams were hearts that endured. Hearts that taught their children to rise again. Hearts that shared pain so others would learn peace. The question of tears was answered. For humanity, tears were not a weakness to erase. They were a gift to share. And the envoy began to wonder if perhaps the galaxy itself had been poorer without them. The envoy spent more days among the humans, and each day brought new lessons. They had already learned that humans remembered their pain, and they had seen children cry and then rise again. But the envoy still wondered if this strange openness came only in small things, or if it also lived in the larger heart of humankind. The answer came sooner than expected. One morning, the envoy was invited to a gathering in a human city. It was not a grand city of shining towers but a place filled with simple streets, homes, and markets. The humans had chosen it on purpose, saying they wished to show the visitors the life of ordinary people. At the center of the city stood a hall where people had gathered. Inside, there were no thrones or jewels, only rows of chairs and banners on the walls. The banners did not show victories in war. They carried names of people who had been lost in past struggles. Beneath each name was a small light, burning quietly. The humans explained that once every year they came together to remember those who had been lost in conflicts long past. They did not hide the sorrow, and they did not erase the memory. Instead, they sang songs, told stories, and lit candles so that no one would be forgotten. The envoy watched closely. The humans wept openly as they spoke of parents, children, and friends who were gone. Yet their tears were not only of sorrow. They also smiled, laughed, and shared memories with warmth. It was grief and joy woven together, like two rivers flowing into one. Care, the young warrior from Rol, could not understand at first. To him, death was only honored with silence and discipline. Yet here, the humans spoke of the dead as if they still walked beside them. Later, he asked a human why they did this. The answer came from a woman holding a candle. We speak their names because we love them still. Even if they are gone, their light lives in us. To forget would be to lose them twice. To remember is to keep them alive. The words struck Care deeply. He had trained all his life to be strong, to stand above sorrow. But in that moment he realized that perhaps strength was not only found in silence. Perhaps strength also lived in the courage to remember, even when it hurt. That evening, the envoy walked back through the city. They saw children playing in the streets, their laughter echoing against the walls. They saw elders sitting together, speaking of the past. They saw workers returning home, tired yet smiling. Life moved with a rhythm that carried both hardship and hope. Sauron, who once believed pain should be erased, began to write in his record. Humans are unlike any race I have studied. They do not hide their wounds. They carry them like banners, but not for pride. They carry them so others may learn. Their strength is not in the absence of pain, but in the way they walk forward with it. Scholar Thuin also wrote, his words softer but filled with wonder. I believed tears were weakness. I believed screams were only signs of despair. But I see now that for humans, tears and screams are part of their strength. They face storms inside their hearts, and instead of breaking, they grow. Perhaps that is why their voice reached the stars when others did not. Perhaps the galaxy needed to hear it. On the final night before the envoys returned to the council world, the humans invited them to watch one last tradition. At the edge of a wide river, people gathered with lanterns made of paper and light. Each lantern carried a small message or a name. When the sun disappeared, they placed the lanterns on the water. The river carried them away, 1,000 small lights drifting into the dark. The envoy stood silently, watching the lights float farther and farther. The river looked like a mirror of the sky itself, stars above and stars below, joined by human hands. For a moment, it felt as if the humans were speaking not only to the river but to the galaxy itself. When the last lantern vanished into the distance, the elder who had first spoken to the envoy turned and said, "This is who we are. We weep, we laugh, we remember, and we hope. This is our strength." The envoy carried those words into their hearts. They had come seeking answers to the scream. What they found was greater. Humanity's power was not in machines or armies. It was in memory, in tears, in the strength to carry pain and still rise again. As the envoy prepared to leave Earth, they knew the galaxy would not believe such simple truths at once. Many would still fear the scream, still see only danger in its rawness. But the envoy had seen what lay beyond it. They had seen the unveiling of human strength. The journey home would begin at dawn. And with it, the next chapter of humanity's story among the stars. The envoy ship left Earth at sunrise. Its smooth frame lifted into the sky while the humans stood below, waving their hands and sending voices of farewell. The envoy carried no treasure, no weapons, and no promises of power. What they carried instead were memories, words, and truths that could not be measured in weight. The journey back to the council world was quiet. Each member of the envoy sat with thoughts too deep for speech. Scholar Thuin replayed in his mind the image of the river lanterns drifting away into the night. Care remembered the child who cried, then laughed, and stood again. Saran carried the sound of human voices, voices that spoke of sorrow yet glowed with hope. When the ship at last reached the council world, the grand hall of voices filled once again. Delegates from across the stars gathered to hear the report. The hall was tense. Many feared the worst. They still remembered the scream, and they expected tales of danger, violence, or threats. The High Speaker welcomed the envoy and raised his staff. "You have touched the world of humans. Speak now. Tell us what truth lies behind the sound that shook the stars." Scholar Thuan stepped forward first. His watery form shimmered under the hall lights. His voice was gentle yet firm. "The scream is not a weapon. It is memory. It is sorrow kept alive, not to harm others, but to remind themselves of the cost of peace." A wave of murmurs spread through the chamber. Some shook their heads. Others leaned forward to listen more closely. Then Saran spoke, his tone sharp but clear. "Humans do not erase their pain. They keep it. They share it. At first, I thought it foolish. Now I see it is their strength. Their tears are not weakness. They are truth. They do not hide what breaks them. They rise from it." The hall grew restless. A delegate from the crystal towers rose and said, "You call this strength? To carry wounds like trophies? It will consume them. It will consume us if we let their cries spread." Before Saran could reply, young Care stepped forward. His voice carried the strength of the warriors of Rul, but it also carried new understanding. "I watched them honor their dead with joy as well as grief. I watched a child fall, cry, and stand again. I saw that their pain does not destroy them. It shapes them. They are strong because they embrace sorrow, not because they deny it. That is a strength greater than silence." The chamber erupted in debate. Some shouted that humans were dangerous, too wild to be trusted. Others whispered that perhaps this new way of living was worth learning. The High Speaker struck his staff against the floor, and silence returned. He looked at the envoy with steady eyes. "You have seen much, but we cannot judge on words alone. Show us. Let us hear again the sound that began this gathering. Let us hear it, but this time with the truth you have found." The envoy nodded. They carried with them recordings not only of the scream but of other human voices as well. With careful hands, Scholar Thuan prepared the device. A hush fell over the chamber. The scream filled the hall once more. It rose, sharp and raw, echoing against the stone walls. The delegates shifted uncomfortably. Some closed their eyes, remembering their first shock. But then, before the sound ended, a new voice followed. It was a human song, soft and gentle. It carried sorrow, but also hope. After the song came laughter, the sound of children playing. Then words of peace spoken by a human leader long ago. The chamber was no longer filled with only anguish. It was filled with the full voice of humanity, pain, joy, memory, and hope woven together. When the sounds ended, silence held the hall. The delegates looked at one another with wide eyes. For the first time, they understood that the scream was only the beginning, not the whole. Humanity had sent many voices, but the galaxy had heard only one. An elder delegate from a distant world rose slowly. His voice trembled as he spoke. "I see now. The scream was not meant to frighten us. It was meant to remind us. We have forgotten tears. We have forgotten sorrow. And in forgetting, we have forgotten part of ourselves." Others began to nod. Some still resisted, but the seed of change had been planted. The truth of humanity could not be unheard. That night, in the quiet chambers of the council world, something happened that had not been seen for centuries. A delegate from the mountain world sat alone and wept. His tears fell not from weakness, but from memories long buried. Others followed in secret, moved by the sounds they had heard. For the first time, the galaxy began to remember what it meant to feel. The day of screams was no longer only a day of fear. It became the day the galaxy discovered tears. And through those tears, a new path opened, one that would change the stars forever. The council world had never known such silence. After the envoy's return and the sharing of human voices, the great chamber stood still for many days. Delegates who once argued with passion now sat quietly, reflecting. The memory of the screams, the songs, and the laughter lingered in their hearts. Outside the hall, the people of many worlds whispered of what had been heard. Some spoke with fear, believing humans carried storms too dangerous to spread. Others spoke with awe, believing humans carried a gift that the galaxy had long forgotten. For the first time in centuries, every voice in the galaxy spoke of the same subject. The envoy waited, unsure of what decision the council would make. They had carried truth from Earth, but truth alone did not guide the stars. Each world would need to choose its own path. Finally, the High Speaker called for one last gathering. The chamber filled again, every seat taken. The air was heavy, as if the weight of many worlds rested on the hall. The High Speaker rose and spoke. We have lived long without tears. We have erased sorrow from our records, believing it to be weakness. Yet the humans have shown us another way. They keep their pain, they share it, and they rise stronger because of it. We must decide now. Do we turn away from this path, or do we learn from them? The debate began, but it was not like before. It was quieter, more thoughtful. Delegates spoke not with anger, but with trembling voices. One from the crystal towers admitted, I erased my grief when my child passed. I thought it was wisdom, but it was emptiness. Hearing the human voices has returned that memory to me. It hurts, yet I feel more alive than I have in years. Another delegate from the water world of Ilur said, we built our lives on calm seas. Yet calm seas cannot teach us how to survive storms. The humans live with storms in their hearts, and yet they do not fall. Perhaps we must learn as they do. The hall grew still again. Many eyes turned toward the envoy. At last, the High Speaker gave his judgment. We will not fear the humans. We will not silence their voices. Instead, we will welcome them. We will learn from them. Let this day be remembered as the day the galaxy shed its first tears. The words echoed across the chamber. For a long moment, no one moved. Then, slowly, one delegate rose to his feet. His eyes glistened as tears fell, the first his people had known in many lifetimes. Others followed. Soon, beings of every shape and form wept quietly in the chamber. Not with despair, but with release. They had discovered what had been hidden from them for generations. The envoy stood in wonder. Scholar Thuan whispered, this is the gift of humankind. They have given us back our tears. News spread across the stars. On distant planets, people listened again to the human recordings. They no longer heard only fear. They heard sorrow, yes, but also hope and strength. In marketplaces, in schools, in homes, beings of many races felt their hearts move in new ways. Some wept for the first time. Others laughed through tears, understanding what it meant to carry both pain and joy together. On Earth, the humans did not yet know how far their voices had reached. They lived their days as before, working, dreaming, and sharing life with one another. But across the galaxy, their cries had planted seeds that would grow for generations. The humans had not built great fleets or vast empires, yet they had changed the stars with something far greater, the strength of the heart. In time, the envoy returned to Earth. They told the humans what had happened on the council world. They told them how tears had been born again among the stars. The humans listened with quiet wonder, never expecting that their old recordings and their simple traditions could move entire civilizations. The elder who had first spoken to the envoy smiled softly. We only shared who we are. If the galaxy has learned to weep, then perhaps it has also learned to live. As the envoy prepared to leave once more, the humans gathered on the riverbank. They placed lanterns on the water, just as they had before. But this time, the envoy placed lanterns beside them. Together, the river carried lights from many worlds into the night. The stars above seemed brighter, as if they too carried the reflection of those small flames. And so the story of the Day of Screams became something greater. It was no longer a day of fear, but the beginning of a new age. The first tears of humankind had become the first tears of the galaxy. In those tears, the stars themselves found understanding, and the voice of humanity was no longer alone. The galaxy would remember.